Happy because we are at the 10th Fund Forum Analizy Online that take place in Warsaw. That's the 10th edition of the investment conference. And I am very happy because today with me is a special guest. And as well, she is also the keynote speaker at the Fund Forum, Hilary Lopez, which represents Goldman Sachs Asset Management. Hilary is also a managing director in client business within Goldman Sachs Asset Management, with responsibility of EMEA, so our region, in retail client business. Hilary, happy to welcome you.
Very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Excellent.
For inviting me.
Yes, in Poland for 30 years we haven't developed the business well. I mean, the assets that our whole business reach is not adequate to the Polish economy, to wealth of Poles. What's the reason behind that? What has caused that the market hasn't developed well?
Well, you know, first of all, Michael, I would say, I mean, and it's testament today, just look at how busy this conference is. I think that the Polish investment community should be proud, and wealth management community, of what you've achieved so far. You have a significant domestic infrastructure business. So that would be my first observation, that you have created a substantial domestic business. I think as we look forward, and probably right now, one of the factors that may have caused that is that actually just the interest rate that you can get from deposits and also from Polish fixed income right now is quite high. So that means that the premium to access other asset classes is a little bit more reduced when you have those high yields. So I do think there are some temporal issues that are also driving that. But I think on the forward look for the industry, there are structural trends. Mm-hmm. One of them being the continued retailization of pensions, from the state, from DC, and from corporate provisioning to DC and to retail pensions. And I think that will continue to grow the industry.
Do you think that will be a new trend?
It's already a trend in many parts of Europe already. I mean, I'm from the UK. The pension freedoms which were launched in 2015 were a real driver to flows into the retail markets. So I think that will be a trend here. And I do think that there is an opportunity to diversify, from what is a very domestic business right now.
Step by from the Polish home buyers.
Yeah, from the Polish home buyers to other regions, but to other asset classes as well. Okay,
what new trends you see outside the Poland, and which or from them can be visible in Poland pretty soon? Do you have any observation about that?
Yeah, I do. There's a number of trends from an investment standpoint. Let me start there. So we're absolutely seeing continued interest and actually increased interest for liquid alternatives. And that asset class tends to come back into popularity when you have the volatility and the kind of macro backdrop that we have. So I think that we will see alternative investments continuing to see interest in the market, also Poland.
What do you mean exactly by alternative investments? Because it's a very huge category.
It is.
And in Poland we have very small representation of this asset class. What exactly is alternative investment?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think there's 32 subsectors in Morningstar of liquid alternatives. That's just liquid alternatives, not private assets. So you're completely right. I think that we're going to see. So my observation is that generally liquid alternatives, and particularly areas like pair trades, but also trend following strategies, macro strategies that benefit well from volatility. These are the kind of sub-segments of liquid alternatives that I would expect to see come back into popularity over the next 12, 24 months with this backdrop. And we're already starting to see that in the engagements that we're having across Europe. So that's an area that I'd see. On the private side of the business, I also think that we will see private assets continue to see interest. There's many sub-segments.
Private equity?
Well, private equity, private debt, infrastructure. There's many sub-segments of private assets that are good for high inflation environments, which of course we're in, but also are very income producing. So I think that will be, two of the drivers to continued interest. One of the issues for retail investors in this region is that there hasn't been a supply of vehicles that are constructed for European investors at the right denominations, and that's something that I think will change, that the supply will change over the next 2 years.
What is your opinion about passive investment? In Poland, it's also a small representation of this type of investments, and Poles are not used to passive strategies, and also including ETFs. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so look, globally, ETFs were created in, it was, how long ago is it now? 2015? I think it was
7 years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago. So they're really quite recent, but look at how it's grown, right? So passive investing generally is now 10 trillion of assets globally, and it's forecast. This is the consensus to grow to 20 trillion of assets by 2026. Now there will be regional differences. So we already see particularly active ETFs growing their share of the US market, and there are tax advantages to that. Here in Europe, I think the drivers to the growth of the ETF market will be two main things, which we're already seeing. So in the first quarter of this year, we saw a very significant uptick in ESG ETFs.
Yeah, that was one of my questions.
And actually they saw more flows than the active side of ESG. So that was a really significant quarter. And then the second area that we've seen in Europe, very significant interest, is where investors are looking for quite specific, quite niche allocations within their portfolios, and they want to be able to take that in a very quick and low cost means. So thematic sectors, sector exposures, we see significant interest from clients today to take exposures for ETFs in that area.
So you think the pressure for the lowering the cost will be still visible?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think that we know and we see it regionally. Growth of passive in US is ahead of Europe, but we've seen very significant growth.
But not only passive funds, also in active funds. You think that will be a trend?
I think we will. Given the volatility, that is the perfect market for active investors and for active strategies to show their worth. So I think that in the environment that we're in, that we will definitely see passive investing grow, and I think it will also happen in Poland. But we will also see a good market for active investing, because people are going to need strategies that can generate good income returns, good capital preservation, and you see that in the active side of the business.
Okay, as a global player, you see everything differently than from the local perspective. What would be the greatest or the biggest advice for the Polish market from your point of view?
Yeah, look, I don't class myself as to be an expert on the Polish market, so I don't want to be to overstep my experience to advise you. I think for me, what I see is some very consistent European trends, which actually have affected different rates. So in some markets they're adopted very quickly. I think the key issue for the Polish market is to think, what next? How do we take the Polish market from where it is today, which is a very good domestically biased business, to something which is perhaps more diversified, but looking at those trends, which I do believe will play out in each market, but how do you localize those trends to this market? Okay,
so I think we will stay with this advice as the last topic. So what's next? That's the clue. I'm very happy that Hilary Lopez joined the Fund Forum, that we had opportunity to talk. So thank you very much for the attendance.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your time.